Hey guys, today we are going to be talking more about kind of how we were impacted by the House of Prayer and specifically my story in all of this. So stay tuned.
Hey, so welcome. Season 6, episode 3. It's a little crazy, actually. I think that we've done this. I think we're probably on 104th, 103rd episode.
Something like that.
It's been fun. And I just want to kind of just set the context. Season 6, we're kind of just talking about the body of Christ, the church, and our troubles, our problems that are being highlighted. But then also there's a part of us where we're wanting to be a productive, constructive conversation. Like, here's where we've got some issues. We need to own them. Yeah. And then I think here's where we need to transition and kind of here's, I think, where we need to move forward. And so one of our data points is actually IHOP and our experience there, the leadership and what is being highlighted that was done wrong. And just kind of having healthy, authentic conversations that are constructive. Yeah. And so that means we're just wanting to be honest. We're wanting to be real, I think. Yeah. I know it's really hard for you, Jen, but we're going to really try and get it out of you today.
Because I'm so fake.
No. You guys are just listening to us. We love to banter. It's part of our love language. But we're just having a little segment once in a while on interesting, funny comments that are left on some of the videos that are made for either advocate group or just different places. So this one was made in the context regard to my wife on the advocate group. You've got it memorized, I think. I mean, it's short. So what was it?
Well, there was a conversation of who is that woman?
And it was you and Alan Hood in the video. Okay.
Yeah, that's Alan Hood and I. And so who is that woman? Is she a preacher? Someone says, no, I think it's Dwayne's wife. And then another person says, she's really pushy, but Alan Hood seems so godly. And it just, I don't know, it just made me laugh. Well, because a couple of reasons, like, oh, wow, you can tell that already. I mean, great. But whenever a woman has strength of personality, it's seen as negative.
Has an opinion.
And I don't see it as a negative. You don't see it as a negative. But if you do see it as a negative, you probably just want to stop now and keep scrolling because this place comes with strong women.
And opinions.
And opinions. It was funny.
Here's another one I liked. So I'm 12. This is, I think, to our first episode, season 6. So,
when we were starting back up again.
Yep. So I'm 12 minutes in now and still talking about yourselves in the podcast. No wonder the investigation is going nowhere.
I do think that's funny.
I think it's funny too.
And well, I guess we don't have to explain context for everything, but we kind of built our podcast with people that had been following us for years in ministry. So we feel like we have a bit of a relationship with people, and
Correct, yeah.
As it grows, you don't know everyone on the list anymore. Right. So there's the element of doing a newsletter update and random people are going, guess what? I don't care.
Yeah, it's not about you.
Which is funny.
I get it.
Yeah, we like that.
So let's transition.
Yeah, let's.
So I think one of the I think probably ideas that we're feeling right now is the institutions and some ministries are just wanting to kind of lock down the hatch, and just kind of just protect themselves and not really wanting to have conversation, not really wanting to have dialogue, and then not really wanting to be open or transparent. Yeah. And I think that is a problem. And so we're being fairly open in our communication. We're going to probably say maybe some strong statements. And I just want to kind of just reiterate that that I think it's important that we have frank and honest conversation. And because, first of all, everybody's an adult here. You know what I mean? We just gotta let's have that understanding. And then second of all, I'm just so aware of the lack of the fear of the Lord. And it's almost like what we've built, we want to more protect than we actually want to own our sin and repent before the Lord. And that is, to me, I think this is a very general statement, but it's a real issue.
Right.
And we're just wanting to walk. No. I think we need to be open.
Yeah.
I think we need to be transparent. So that's a little bit of just, you're going to get some of the feel. And last episode there was a couple strong statements that were made. And I want us to have that freedom to say these things. And I want some of you, if you kind of get hurt or offended or, whoa, I was asking, hey, just take a minute and then come back, maybe listen to it again or continue listening. Because we're wanting to be constructive. And I think it needs to be, we got to be open and we got to say hard things.
Right.
So tell just a little bit of your story.
Yeah.
Even leading up to IHOP, and then just really put in there when you met me.
Right? Because that's a good one.
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. Well, I do need to say this, though. I am wearing retainers right now because my teeth have shifted. And so I feel like I sound like Sid the Sloth from Ice Age.
A little bit.
So if you're only listening, you probably hear it more than if you're watching. And so I'm sorry about the slurring.
Okay.
So that's out there. But if I were to take them out now, it'd be like a dog with slobber spilling out over the camera. So we're not going to do that. We're just going to roll with the lisp. Okay, so, but I do want to say something about what you just said. Something that I am grateful for in the comments is people are feeling like, oh, I'm not alone. Oh, I did feel that too. Right. And it's not to get a snowball rolling and not to empower a mob. There's something about validating people's experience and their pain and even some of the confusion that they experience. And then they get out and get some clarity to say what it is, be able to define it, describe it, allows actually people to heal.
Correct.
So it's not our goal that we inflame people and create this mob of people that want to go torch everything down. I want to be free in my inner man, as free as I possibly can be. And I have some pockets inside of me where there's some speed bumps to freedom. And I'm focusing on that. I'm recognizing that. I'm becoming aware. I'm trying to repent. I'm trying to feel what I didn't want to feel. And in order to be able to go through it instead of around it, because then you have to go back through it again.
Correct.
And so it's about getting to a state of wholeness. That's why we're doing this for people. And in our opinion, we think this is helpful and pastoral. For some people, they may not see it that way, and that's okay. Correct. You don't have to watch it.
Correct.
You may not be the target audience.
Right.
And so that's all right. So, okay, back to me. Woohoo! I started out a zealous believer. I got saved at 16. All in on everything, right? And we met.
Yeah, radical conversion.
Radical conversion, saved out of chaos, just a lot. There's a lot of funny stories. I'm not going to go into all that. But I early on wanted to go to the mission field and envisioned myself living and dying on the mission field. Mm-hmm. And in my youthful zeal, my inexperience, my all in, I thought that, possibly I could be martyred, which would have been amazing in my naive worldview.
You're reading, and you're early in your journey, you're reading
Fox's books of martyrs.
Right. So you got passion.
Yeah, and I'm reading missionary stories. Yep. And truth be told, I was so grateful for my salvation.
Amen.
That it was like, I want to give him everything.
Yep.
I want to pour my life out. And I didn't understand that you could do that in any context. Right. I only had a narrow expression of what a poured out life looked like. Yep. And therein lies one of my regrets. Part of that is there wasn't enough voices shaping, hey, you can do that as an accountant.
Right.
And you're wholehearted wanting to give everything.
I don't think you would have been an accountant. Just
No.
Yeah,
No.
look at our bank, look at our checkbook. But,
Yeah, bad example. Okay.
but the expression of I want to love God with everything was
Yes.
to be a missionary.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I would say this phrase, I want to give the Lord, I want to give him the best years of my life. I want to give him the years of my youth. And I did.
Yeah.
And there's elements now, and I'm probably jumping ahead, where I feel like that was exploited. And that hurts me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sorry, I didn't expect these tears, especially with this lispy talk. It's kind of like, now I sound like a drunk podcaster. Anyway, so that was my heart. I wanted to give him the years of my youth. I wanted to give him the best years of my life. I didn't want to live my own life and then come back in my 70s and 80s and go, here, you can have the leftovers.
Right.
And it was sincere, and it was pure.
Amen.
And it was real.
And it counted.
And
Yeah.
and so what do? Well, you go to the nations. You know what I mean? But of course, I meet you in 1988.
Come on, church.
It's my last year of high school. I have a spiral perm. I look like a poodle. Oh, we should insert a photo. And you have a mullet, and you're just, yeah, you got the mullet. We'll just leave it at that. And when I met you, you had like David Lee Roth pants on. David Lee Roth, the lead singer from Van Halen. Woohoo! Although I didn't listen to secular music, so I shouldn't even have known that. And so I meet you, and my first impression with you was that you were simple, but we won't go into all that.
Thank you.
But we were witnessing partners, because I met you in 1988 in the Winter Olympics. Your dad's church sponsored my church's outreach.
Yep.
And we went up to do evangelism. And so we meet, and I was, of course, married to the Lord. Dating was nothing but adultery. And, you know, so that's where we met, super intense. So you saw me in my most intense phase. Correct. And you were dating with someone because you were in compromise. So fast forward, I go to Amsterdam, do my discipleship training school with YWAM.
Yep.
You had gone, 3 months before. So we connect. We're in YWAM for like 10 years. And
connect. I mean, YWAM for 10 years. We got married.
Yeah.
We were in YWAM for 10 years.
Yeah, test drive a car, baby. No,
I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, I skipped a lot. 1991, we got married. 1989, I went to Amsterdam. 1988, you went to Amsterdam. And then, blah, blah, blah. A lot of details there.
So we spent 10 years in YWAM.
10 years in YWAM. And up to that point, I had traveled to 35 nations. You had probably already traveled to 40 by then. And it was wonderful. You know what I mean? Like exciting. And
we waited to have kids. So when we moved here, our oldest, Sydney, was a year and a half.
Yeah.
Almost 2. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, heading towards 2.
Yeah. And so we had gone hard and fast. And I think you had said this, we both had touched our humanity and our barrenness.
Right.
And we were longing for deeper spiritual root system.
Yep.
We wanted lasting impact because we had done lots of short-term evangelism trips.
Yep.
I mean, when we moved to Kansas City, that was the first time I'd ever really preached in a church, other than giving missionary reports, like preaching a message in a church.
Yeah.
Before
We'd
that
always
was
done
just
it on the streets. Or
street evangelism.
Street evangelism, big deal.
Like doing, we were those people doing a call and people give their lives to the Lord on the streets. A lot of incredible stories about that. So when we moved to Kansas City, it's a very long story how we got here, and kind of cool and now kind of confusing as I look back and see that there had been some perversion of the prophetic already, but I didn't know that. And so we came to Kansas City to go to Bible school. And Sam Storms is a Bible school guy. And already I started feeling disrupted because in the context we were in, I was an equal player and I was valued. Up until we moved here. Yeah. And if a meeting didn't work for me, well, then we would rearrange it and make it work for me too, so I could be there. So I felt included, I felt valued, I felt heard, I felt seen, I felt wanted, I felt like a contributor.
Yep.
And then we move here, and just the nature of the game, some of it's just the nature of the game. We had to slip into more traditional roles. I mean, we got a baby, got to take care of this little girl. And so, there are some classes I did at night that you would stay home with her and all of that. But so what was going to be difficult for me to unravel is I was going through an identity crisis already because I had become a mom, and I started to question my value because I didn't fully get it yet. Right. Does that make sense? Yep. In the midst of arriving at a new place and a new culture, and we thought we were only going to be here a year and then go back out into the nations. So I didn't even allow myself to fully own the fact that we moved back to the United States instead of it being a pit stop. I thought it was going to be a pit stop. Right. And in the midst of this, the House of Prayer starts. We already have our full support, so we were able to jump in day one. Yeah. And so Mike gave us the title, the first official staff members. Those early days were awful and wonderful. Like, they were. Like, just finding camaraderie with people that were hungry like us was incredible. I had really beautiful moments of sitting in the prayer room and just being with Jesus just because he's fun to be with, instead of praying for it before you go on an outreach. Correct. So kind of reconnecting that place of intimacy with him was sweet, but then awful because our roles were a bit more divided. I didn't understand a lot of the culture. And in the beginning, I wasn't convinced that Mike was that great of a guy. And I said,
you called it out.
I said, this man either has a double life or he's a new believer. Yeah. Which I knew he wasn't a new believer.
Correct.
And the reason I thought he must have a double life was because the things that he was doing, it felt like it was compensating for something. So when someone really blows it, then they try to make up for it the next day by doing something epic. Yep. And so it felt like he was living this extra lifestyle that I'd never seen anyone live before.
Teaching, preaching, fasting,
all of
just
it.
The extremes.
All the extremes.
There was early on, there was a ton of extremes.
Yes.
And some would say, no, that was always. I think early on it was extra.
So, but I got convinced that I'm the goofball, and how dare I judge the man of God? Yeah. And so I overrode my own gut response to him, and just went, okay, I'm less than.
Yes.
And so therein began my journey into feeling inferior. And I would say my role within relationships with Mike and others was I was a great intercessor on the microphone, and I was funny. Those were the two things I felt like I was allowed to be. But I wasn't allowed to be the fullness of who I was. And there was very little outlet for my gifts. And then now we're pregnant again. So I'm trying to juggle being a mom. And I wanted to do it well. I wanted to do it really well.
Being a mom.
Being a mom. And I didn't want to, regret my, think my kids were the stumbling block to me being a woman of God, all that stuff. Sure. I didn't want to throw them aside and go do this circuit. I didn't want to do that. Yeah. But it was still difficult. And the language within the IHOP community was so intense and extra. And sometimes I didn't understand what people are talking about. Like, I don't know what this means.
Right.
But everyone else seemed to get it.
Right.
And so it felt like there was like this flurry of clusters of people that got it and I didn't. And I'm on the outside going, do I get that? Do I not get? I don't know what they're talking about. Because flowery language was so highlighted and seen as beautiful.
Correct. Yeah.
What were you going to say?
Highlight what the Lord showed you about the headphones. I want you to highlight that
Yeah.
because I think it's an important part of your story.
Yeah. This is fairly recently, actually. I was having a prayer time with some people and we're praying about, I don't know what, or I do know what, but I'm not going to share. And I had kind of a mind's eye vision. And it was me arriving here with headphones on and the Father's voice was in my head and I heard him and he was my friend and it was simple. Life was simple. It was easy to hear his voice. I knew that he loved me. I felt secure in his affection. And when I got here, I saw in this mind's eye vision, I took one of the headphones out, put another one in, and it was Mike's voice. And I turned down the voice of the Father and turned up the voice of Mike Bickle. And I have deep regret over that. Now, is that Mike's fault? No. I can't blame him for that. But the community, I can't blame anyone for it, I guess.
I'm going to disagree with you.
Okay.
Let me say this. And I actually genuinely mean this. You had, I don't even know how you measure this, but you had a depth of communion with God that I didn't in the early years of our marriage even. Mm-hmm. And I think part of it is because I grew up in the church and it was more just Christianity, cultural for me. And I was sincere. I love the Lord, but you had a radical conversion, and in that, you really grabbed a hold of praying the scriptures.
Yeah,
you really grabbed a hold of the Word of God, and really were transformed by it. And then you had a deep relationship, a communing relationship with God.
Yes,
God the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. You had that, and so I think a powerful dynamic that Mike Bickle created was this whole messaging to create a whirlwind where you want and have to be a part.
Yeah.
And it was the whole messaging. Mm-hmm. And part of it was, this is how you define radical.
Right.
And you had a deep desire to be radical.
Right.
And follow Jesus.
Yeah.
Like that was a sincere desire. And he created this messaging platform and defined what radical was, and it was according to his definition.
Right. That's good, Dwayne.
And you said, okay, I want to do it.
I want to do it. And it wasn't doable. Like I couldn't do what he called radical.
Right.
I mean, I remember trying so hard to fast. Like he talked to me and he says, if you fasted from Sunday after dinner or lunch or something, the way he did that thing. Yeah. And then, you break the fast, I think Wednesday breakfast or Tuesday breakfast. Right. And he's, do that. Cause he's trying to help me be radical. But it was hard. I mean, I had just had a baby. I've got a 3-year-old and I got a newborn, and I'm really trying. Like I really was trying. And I mean, the tears I'm experiencing now are more, I feel sorry for how hard I tried and how much I beat myself up. So it's me looking back at that girl. Yep. And I have compassion on her, and I want to tell her it's okay.
That's right.
You're not going to lose him. But the feeling of feeling inferior regularly.
It was the constant that everyone felt, but nobody would verbalize.
Yeah. Because if you felt that you were inferior, admitted insecurity or jealousy or any negative emotion, well, then your identity wasn't in Christ.
Yeah, for sure.
And therefore, your problem.
Yeah.
So I lived believing I was the problem.
Right.
If I could just do this more, if I could just do that more.
Right.
I mean, I remember doing a fast because I could not wrap my head around the end of the H, right? Like, okay, I believe Jesus is coming back. I believe in persecution, and there's the abomination, desolation, just all the things, trying to get it. But the way people talked, they had all these extra phrases that I wasn't seeing. Like, I don't know what that corridor of glory is, or all these phrases. And I'm going to the E12, which is the eschatology 12, where we try to study it. And it's like my mind would shut down. I couldn't grasp it because it seemed, I didn't know where they were finding it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so just beating myself up again and again and again. And so one time I did
You're kind of going a little bit. I just want to.
Am I boring you?
A little bit. I just want to insert here. It's really, especially in those early days, there was this messaging of radical. But I also want to highlight, and this is now documented, he was living a double life.
Right.
In that year we started.
Yes.
In the first years, he like, I'm positive he's been living a double life the entire time. But that isn't really important.
Yeah.
And so even his fasting, and we're going to interview some people on just to help understand things, but he lived such a divided life.
Yeah.
And so it was his attempt at trying to be righteous, I think.
Yeah.
And
Make up for it.
And it was birthed out of his own guilt, I think.
Yes.
So that is just really important to get.
Yeah.
So the message and the call was not from a place of deep rest. It wasn't from a place of peace.
Yeah.
Birthed in the heart of the Father.
Yeah.
It was an entirely different self-righteous reach to be right before God.
Right.
And so I just want to say that.
That's a huge point, Dwayne.
Because we go there, show up, okay, and we're not living a double life.
Right.
And so we're thinking this. And so one of the underlying themes, I think, that if you would ask everybody that was there, especially early on, but I think all the time, is you felt inferior, and you could never quite do it.
Right.
The reality is nobody did it.
Right.
Like Mike didn't do it. Like, no way.
Right.
So nobody did it.
Right.
Nobody did the sacred.
So we're called to an illusion and told that everyone is succeeding. And so something wasn't right. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, no, I've got so many.
There's so much to say about that. Yeah. And so the intensity that I was trying to live under. And so one of the 40-day water fasts I did, when I have 3 small children now, you know what I mean? Come on. Yeah. And anyway, and I actually, there's a part of fasting I do love. So I'm not saying I'll never fast again. Right. I probably will never water fast again unless I really feel a clear direction, because I just don't think it's healthy for the body.
Yeah.
Because anyway, living proof, too much fasting jacks with your metabolism. Anyway, so I did 40-day water fast. I read the book of Daniel in its entirety in one sitting, one day. The book of Revelation in its entirety in one sitting the next day. Yeah. So 20 times I read the book of Daniel, 20 times I read the book of Revelation. And I still didn't feel like I got it.
Correct, yeah.
And I just remember that feeling of discouragement, like, I don't know what else I can do. And somehow I equated my ability to get it, because that was the language that was used.
Massively.
Someone left because they didn't get it.
Yep.
Someone left because they couldn't do it anymore, or they're in compromise. Yeah. So I'm
living... Or
offended. Oh, that was the big one, offended. So I'm living amongst the superstars, And I
Can't do it.
So I just resigned myself to be a good helpmeet and just be a support to you.
You didn't even do a great job.
Right?
I'm kidding.
So, yeah, it's just, so there's a lot of pain and missed opportunities, lack of development that I received, but a lack of development that anyone received. Mike didn't develop people.
No, it was not, there was actually, if you did grow too much, you got your knees taken out.
Yeah, exactly.
You'd actually be competitive. You'd actually compete. And
right. He couldn't celebrate his sons and daughters growing up. No, they had to be taken out if that happened, your case in particular, and others. But, so just that competition, that inferiority, the gaslighting of our own soul, the inability to really confide in one another where we really were, because you don't want to feel like you're going to be left behind. And the 10,000 messengers, we're raising up the 10,000 messengers. And I remember the day I went, I don't think I'm one of the 10,000 messengers. And
remember the day he told me I wasn't?
Yeah. But he told you preached in the realm of the pastoral. And
that was helpful. And there's going to be need for lots of those.
Yeah. So the other messengers do this stuff and then you'll pastor them. But big deal. Isn't that crazy?
I remember going,
oh, wow, he just said that out loud.
He did. And I go, and I also remember I actually don't even care.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, okay.
Right. So, but there was people running for one piece of the pie.
So let me ask you something.
Yeah.
So part of your challenge, I think, let me ask you this question first. Part of your challenge was actually you're gifted to be a communicator.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and then, this is a little bit maybe normal, but in something like the IHOP ministry, where it's about the gift of communication and developing and growing. So some would look at you and go, Jennifer, you actually spoke at the big conference. Mm-hmm. So what are you talking about? Uh-huh. Right? Because some would go, Jennifer's pushing me out.
Right.
You know what I mean? So some women would have looked at you.
Right. And I agree. There would be women that would go, what are you talking about? You had opportunity I didn't have.
Right.
And yeah, that is true.
Yet
all that I thought and felt was still all that I thought and felt. Yeah. And there was a level of critique that was pretty intense. That still is something I'm trying to shake off today. There was a way to preach, a way to communicate, a way to sound. I didn't have that way.
Yeah, and I actually didn't either.
Right, you and I didn't.
Neither of us did.
So making peace with my version was difficult. Yet I fought to be myself. Like I really did. I wanted to be myself. I wanted to be true to who I was. I wanted to encourage people. I wanted them to be absolutely confident in the affection of God. Yeah. And so when I think about the people that just left feeling a lousy piece of crap, it breaks my heart because it's not the heart of the Father for them. And it's sad that there was so much sacrifice that people made. And it delayed them in their career. It delayed them in their bank accounts. It delayed them in their relationship. It burned bridges in certain places. And then to leave and feel like, and I'm disappointing God too. Yeah. I hate that. Yeah. And I want to see people recover that part of their life again. So I think that's a valid point. There were people who look at me and go, what are you talking about? You had lots of opportunities.
But it's dynamic in the dynamics, let me say the dynamics of culture. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think what we're talking a little bit about here is to identify some of the messaging and the culture and how it impacted us.
Yes.
And so I think something also just, I want to, if you're just kind of tuning in, we left in 2013. Mm-hmm. And so we've been on a journey untangling stuff. But then also in this last year, I think we've kind of gone to another level of just, okay, what were we a part of, and how did it form and shape us? But
yeah.
Go on. Sorry.
No, did you have a question?
No, you're not that interesting. So I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. So one of the things that's just kind of buzzing, it's one of the topics that's kind of hit the body of Christ is this term narcissist, and then, sociopath. And so we're going to interview some people on this, and to bring some definition even. We've got an interview lined up even for it. But this is my opinion, that Mike is a narcissist, and yay, more. And so the entire thing was built to, and he was amazing, because he had this persona, a humble man of God, and he would feed that thing like crazy.
Yep.
Yet, it was, but yet when people would get up there, and so it was an environment. A narcissist is not going to have an environment where they help develop and grow others.
Right.
And so he had built this culture. Actually, I was going to say something a friend of mine said, but I won't say it. But he would whisper about others.
Yeah.
To us.
Yes.
And it didn't seem divisive.
Right.
But it was destructive.
Very destructive.
Like, to all of us, it was destructive. And that was I had an Achilles heel the entire time I was there. I always felt less than.
Yeah.
And there's somebody in my mind right now, he destroyed that guy's confidence, obliterated it. And this guy's amazing. So it's just that culture that he built, and a lot of it was based out of whispers.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
He would whisper, we're not going to do it that way. I don't like what they do.
But don't tell them because da-da-da-da-da.
And it was a powerfully, he used it strategically to tear people down.
Yes.
And it was, and then it got a hold of people.
Yeah.
And they began to operate with the same techniques.
Yes. Yes.
Right? And so that became part of the culture.
Yeah.
And it was, I think, that is where you would never have a face-to-face confrontation. That was not, so I'm not saying you never did. And if you did, you were a phenomenal leader, especially in that culture. But most of the time, it was you just replaced the person, often without even telling them. But it was this whisper culture, and it was the thing, you would preach, and then he would whisper about your preaching. And so but you didn't know it.
Right.
But all of a sudden, you're not invited to the next gathering, or you're not invited or given the next platform, and you don't know what in the heck just happened. So that was indicative of a lot of times what would happen.
Yes.
And so you've got an experience. Remember that meeting, and because the culture fed other narcissists.
Yeah.
So, and again, we want to bring definition to the terms, because there's selfish ambition. There's, I want to get ahead. And then I think there's narcissists. And that fed that culture.
They could thrive there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember the meeting you're talking about. We're trying to decide when we could have a leadership meeting. And everyone's suggesting times, and you got 12 people sitting around the table.
Tuesday at 4, whatever.
Yeah, it's a nightmare to try to coordinate, that many people.
Yeah.
So one of the times gets thrown out, and it doesn't work for me. And so I'm like, oh, that time doesn't work for me. But then this other guy says, but that's the only time that works for me. So I said to him, so your schedule is more important than my schedule?
Right.
And he says, yes. And it was like, oh, wow. And he wasn't trying to be mean. To him, he really believed it.
That was his worldview.
And therefore, I am inferior.
Right.
Because his schedule is more important than mine. I'm just a mom.
Right.
Well, you know what I mean?
Sure.
So it just, but little things like that just kind of chipped away at your confidence.
Yeah.
And so 15 years of being part of that community, I lost a lot of ground. And I'm grieving that, to be honest. I just am. And yeah, that's all I'll say about that. One thing that Stuart Greaves did that was a really kind thing, I'm going to say something nice about Stuart.
Yeah.
I went to him and I tried to confess my selfish ambition because I wished that I'd been asked to do that or this and that. And I was trying to make myself available and I just wasn't chosen. And I said to him, Stuart, I am just struggling with selfish ambition. He goes, it's not selfish ambition, it's lack of opportunity. He says, you're a gifted woman. You should have opportunity. And I was just like, thank you, Stuart.
Right.
Like it was kind.
Right.
So thank you, Stuart, for that. I'll leave it at that. But the other thing I kind of regret when I look around, I didn't see myself rightly. Therefore, I wasn't a shepherd to younger people because they came in and maybe I had a voice into their life for about 3 to 4 months until they got indoctrinated. And then they sounded like everyone else and they lost their essence. And I just, instead of reaching in to try to pull them back and help them stay true to who they were and incorporate something but not lose themselves in the process, I just went, whatever. And I just let it happen. And like I remember when we met with a group of people and they said, well, we didn't question the prophetic history because the Roberts believed it and the Hoods believed it, therefore we believed it.
Right.
And we didn't question the prophetic history because Sam Storms believed it.
Right.
So why would I question it?
Right.
He's got his PhD.
Right.
You know what I mean? And Sam would, he's horrified now at all that stuff.
Yeah.
But there was so much lack of curiosity that the culture created, and I engaged in that. Just a level of indifference or not really going after someone. If I thought they were going off a little bit, I wish I'd chased them down and tried to bring them back. Yeah. And instead it was just like, oh, all right, there's another one.
But I also do want to say that in the midst of all of that though, you built a relationship with one person that was pretty unusual. And I would say that relationship was a really helpful relationship to you.
Yeah.
And then, so you did kind of break from the crowd, and that's what I'm trying to highlight. Yeah. You kind of broke away a couple times.
Yeah.
And then you also gathered women for how many years?
I don't know, a few years.
Yeah. And so you did kind of also though break from the the culture a couple times. And I mean, that was an incredibly life-giving women's group thing you did.
Yeah.
To those women.
Yeah. No, you're right. I am great. Forget about everything negative I said. I rock.
And so just an underlying theme I think you're highlighting here is the extreme dysfunction and harmful culture that you experienced. It really stole your confidence.
Yeah.
And that's where you even today feel like, I wish I would have developed in these areas more. Yes.
And I allowed a soul tie to be attached to Mike and gave him a place that he should have never had. And I mean, I've repented of that. I've done all the things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did.
Yeah.
And I think everyone, 99% of people did.
And so.
Otherwise they left.
I actually don't know how you're going to answer this.
But you hope I don't cry again?
Well, they're not even real tears. Do you feel like your life was wasted at your time at IHOP? Because I have an answer. I can answer that. I mean, I have my own opinion on that for you and also for me. But I would, you're free to have your own opinion.
On a bad day, yes. But I really, I can't get away from God's sovereignty. And I found him. You know what I mean? It was hard, but I found him. I don't know, what part of my history do you take out, and then does it alter who I am today? These are the hard questions to answer. You know what I mean? So do I regret it? No. But would I wish that on someone else? No. I think I can maneuver this and get something out of it and have some life lessons. And if all I gain is a greater sense of discernment, that's a win. You know what I mean? For the future, that's a win. And I've learned I'm not going to override my gut anymore.
Just flesh out that phrase, because it's a phrase that you, what do you mean by that?
Well, I think the Holy Spirit speaks to you, and I feel it in my stomach.
I mean, I think you have the gift of discernment. So you feel things and you just kind of know things. Mm-hmm. And so there were several times throughout our history there that you had discernment.
Yes.
You felt things and sensed things.
Yes.
And you're using the term, you overrode it.
Yes.
And you ignored what actually God was saying to you.
Yes. And I won't do that again, by the grace of God.
Yeah.
And so, okay, that's a good lesson to learn. So I think lessons can be learned, but to be honest, there is grief. There's grief.
Sure.
In 15 years of our life there's grief.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I'm allowing myself to be sad sometimes and feel it. Yeah.
I think that this might be a common probably experience. And so you recently, so you've engaged in counseling again. Mm-hmm. So and so you mentioned an experience with your counselor, mm-hmm. and then your counselor said, and you stayed?
Well, she said, after I shared an experience of mistreatment, she goes, how much longer after that did you stay? And I said, 14 years. And she goes, oh, wow.
So why did you stay?
I think I lacked value. I didn't understand who I was. And so I thought, I am bad. I'm worthless. I'm just lucky to get a crumb from the table. And so I stayed so that you could succeed and I could just be your support.
But it's more than just, I mean, yes, 100%. You chose to really champion me, which I'm very, very
well,
grateful.
I used different language too. It was, I was going to go deep, and I was going to get gold, and I wasn't going to let a little pain and mistreatment derail me. And all of those things are true. You can find God in the midst of terrible circumstances.
Right.
But there's also a time to go, you can't do that to me.
Yeah. Because I think that there's elements of IHOP's culture that were very abusive.
Yes.
And so dysfunctional, abusive. And then I also want to say there's tons of ministries with abusive culture.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
And no ministry is going to be perfect. You're going to have all kinds of pros and cons everywhere you go.
Right. But my point
and they're not all abusive.
But my point is, I think a lot of people would have hurtful experiences where you were mistreated, yet you stayed. Mm-hmm. And that is I think that's a point of just highlighting. Mm-hmm. And then I think it's a good exercise to ask, why did I stay?
Right.
And what were the hooks in my soul
Excellent.
that kept me in this dysfunctional, hurtful environment. And I just want to say again, look, man, some of you guys went to IHOP and it was amazing. Like there's, I think first episode we talked about, there's a huge spectrum of people at IHOP. And then there's some though, that it was this hurtful place, yet we stayed. And so there was a message of be like David, be mistreated, and in being mistreated, God's going to reward you. It's sort of, and there's actually, it is what makes me angry. It's actually a profoundly biblical concept,
right?
But that's for another day. But I've had to wrestle with the same things. I was really mistreated, and yet I continued to allow myself to be mistreated,
right? Until
I kind of got some of that stuff broke off me, and then I started to find my own value.
Yeah.
And it's really, it's that environment where it kind of like tears you down.
Yeah.
But then promises you gold.
Yes. Like
that's really, really harmful.
It's very complex. I remember talking to my mom, and before she was married to my dad, she was married to a heroin addict who beat her so severely that she's 100% deaf in one ear and only has 30% of her hearing in the other. Her nose was broken multiple times.
Horrible, yeah.
Stayed with him for 5 years. And I said to her, Mom, why didn't you leave him? And she goes, after he beat me up, he was so tender and he said he loved me. And there was an element where we got beat up, but then every year we would sign up again. And we would get envisioned again. And it matters.
And this is the way I can be great, change
the
world. Yep.
Yes. And so, in my opinion, the majority of people that went to IHOP were amazing people. They were innocent. They were me in the early days, like just wanted to give their lives away. And there was an element where it was mistreated, and they just stayed because they would sign up again and sign up again. And
that's where I think
it's hard.
I think we should maybe even flush this out because the weaponizing of the scriptures, I use that phrase in one of the other episodes, and it's just, you would, the Sermon on the Mount, when you would find a little self-worth and find your voice for a season, it would be used almost to, sit back down, humble yourself, go low, be mistreated, and God will redeem it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. So that's my story. There's lots more to say, but that's all I'll say for now.
Hey, Jen, thanks for sharing.
Hey, Dwayne, thanks for listening.
Yeah, you kept my attention most of the time.
Appreciate that, sweetie.
Yeah, you bet, man. No, you guys, we just want to, again, these first two episodes, episode 2 and 3, just a little bit of telling our own story. And in that, just hoping to just help bring some definition, some language, some understanding, just to what some of you had felt. And I just, I think it's part of it is just, I really do want to recognize that some moved, to IHOP, to Kansas City, and they had an amazing experience.
Yeah. And
so this last year has been like, wait, you're defining the place as a cult? How's that possible? So there are, and then there's others that it was kind of middle of the road. I had some bad experiences, but I found some friends, and actually it was a great experience. I found God. God talked to me. I loved my Bible. I loved to pray.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then there are those that it was actually a very derailing, like devastating, and so it's just
it's complex.
It really is complex.
Yes.
The culture.
Yes.
And so it's challenging. Jennifer and I we've talked back and forth, like, as a communicator, when you especially when you got an audience, you know who's there, and you can kind of, speak to them. And so this is actually very challenging, I feel, because it's such a gamut of people that are listening.
Yeah.
And some are just thrown off.
Yeah.
Like we actually talked to a guy today who you made a statement last episode that kind of just really shook him, and he goes, actually, yeah, and so it's challenging to do this podcast, to be honest with you, and we feel we're supposed to, but it's challenging. All that to say, so all right, if you're not subscribed to whatever platform, subscribe. And then also go ahead and forward it if you think there's people that would find this helpful. Or again, our heart is to be helpful. Our heart is to, kind of our motivation is just what's going on in the church, and then talking through our experience specifically right now with IHOP, blah, blah, blah. So grace. See you guys soon on the next episode. Until next time.